Hey there, I'm Tam,
And I'm eternally mortal.
and this is the Hidden Egg podcast where we talk about vulnerability.
Welcome back.
But first, responses. Okay, so you've gone through most of these already, I think.
I think so, yeah.
So number one, Carrie.
Welcome back, Carrie.
I swear she's like always the first person to comment on my articles and on the podcast stuff.
It's cute.
She really liked the you're inspiring people, so kind of just deal with it, maybe.
Thanks, Carrie.
Then we have You Good and Good God. So much in the compliment, there was a compliment about that she smiles the whole time, but then most of it was her talking about that that courageous article that she did, and yeah, should we bring the article up now?
Yeah, let's probably do it in that sort of natural sort of way. Also, hi, you good.
So You Good gave us, first off, there was a shout out article basically that call it's called Wishy Washy that she wrote, and I'll have the links in the Medium article and anywhere else I can put links. Um, so that one was just kind of giving us a little bit of the credit for their vulnerability and everything, but the real gem was You Have a Choice to Save a Life was the name of the article.
Wishy Washy was pretty good too.
Wishy
But
Washy was pretty
but
good, but
you have a choice to save a life. Like we had to hydrate again after after listening because we went ahead and did the what do you call it on Medium with the oral narration, the
I don't
speaking
know.
part.
We just listened and read it. It wasn't the listen at the top because there's like a listen thing at the top of all the articles, but this was one that was embedded
Okay, I thought it had
in
a
the
special
article.
name that I just was too much of a
Well,
noob to
I think
understand.
SoundCloud was where she uploaded it.
Well,
Maybe
that's
that's the
fine.
word you're thinking of.
It is not,
It
but
is.
that's cool. Narration is what I'm going to go with.
All right,
So yeah,
narration.
we listened to the narration while reading along with the article, and I think, if I remember correctly, I started crying before, um, you know, anybody else would have. I guess we can probably say that out loud if you listen to it. You Good has an emotional narration of this article, which is a very emotional topic in this article too, and it was beautiful. And before You Good's voice caught, I was already my eyes were already watering. It was beautiful. Thanks for sharing, You Good.
It's a wonderful article and an even better narration. So, anybody listening, I highly recommend going over to it. You'll probably cry, but it's a good kind of cry. It's that cry where we all know what she's feeling, how she's, the just it's good. It's good. I
Mm-hmm.
liked it.
And the vulnerability and transparency in it is astounding. I'm floored and in awe, genuinely.
Okay, so going back to the comments, then there was Sieran Lane,
Hello, Sieran.
which I guess I'm still getting Podbean notifications. I'm not uploading it to Podbean anymore, but apparently they still give out notifications when we do new episodes.
That's odd.
Yeah,
Maybe look into that at some point. Thanks for letting us know.
right? Miss Peach giving me more compliments that I'm not sure how to take or handle.
That's so cute, Miss Peach. Keep it up. But only if they're genuine and you feel like it, of course. No pressure.
Molten Leaves, which, you know,
Love Molten
love
Leaves.
Molten Leaves. Love the name, really.
It's so good.
Happy to be a part of the amazing community that we have.
We're happy to have you.
Jan Sebastian made a comment. She's a medium giant, which you don't really know what that even means.
Okay. They're all just people to me. No offense intended. You're all beautiful people.
And then It's Always Right Now. What do they want from me? And he said he could relate to the skeptical thought. Yeah, I think we all can a little bit. I'm not that abnormal.
Bathe yourself in the compliments. That's asking a lot.
uh,
I appreciate the sentiment, though.
then there was Sieran again, because he's awesome with his comments. This is where he gave me the link for that other article. What are you rarely criticized for? Um, I don't know if I should link to the comment or to the article, but
I mean, no, the comment is in our podcast, right? So in the
yeah,
your
that's true.
article, link to the
That's
article.
true. But yeah, his comments were about like the whole compliments aspect of that podcast last week, and he gave me that article because it was like, instead of thinking about the compliments you get, think about what are you not criticized for very much.
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think I
Yeah.
read this one. Sorry about that, Sierra, and I'll get around to it when I can.
Yeah, I have them saved, so in an easy to find place. So then there was Ben Ulancey, who was impressed that I could get his name correct.
I think you've said it different this time. I think you've been saying Ulanzi, and this time you said
No,
Ulancy.
I said Ulancey.
Interesting.
Maybe I'm
I could be
now
misremembering. Who
now
knows?
I don't know.
I know. Now we'll
Now I
never
was
know.
thinking that I was saying it right, but now you've just destroyed all of my confidence in.
So Ben, let us know if you. Sorry, this is a joke. You don't have to worry about it.
He also asked about us actually having speakers on the podcast, which we're not quite there yet, and I don't know if that might be an extra thing. It might not take the place of the Thursday things, the Thursday episodes.
We might do special episodes where we invite people to talk with us. That's definitely something that's in potential planning stage, but we're still kind of getting our feet wet from our perspective.
I did start messing around with a Discord channel, which it's not really open to the public right now, but
Same.
but the intention is to mess around with it, get comfortable with it, and eventually release it to the public, and then maybe start doing stuff with the podcast on it.
It's a possibility. We've also, potentially considered the idea of doing um, Twitch, having the podcast be live. But, we'll see.
Right, yeah.
No promises.
No promises on anything.
I mean, we're pretty set on doing this every Thursday like this, so we can maybe promise that for now.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I feel like that's a good promise we can make. EA Colquitt, I think she just came across it for the first time and is really excited to catch up on them because I don't think she's gotten to, I don't know, by now she might have listened to the whole thing. That was like 4 days ago.
Well, yeah, but no pressure, EA Colquitt. We appreciate the interest, so thank you very much. And if you do, listen, I like to go from the beginning too. If you do, that's fantastic.
Akeen Moses was in the comments again.
Hello, Akeen.
And then there was this big long thing from Lorna that I didn't actually have you read. I don't know if maybe I should pause the thing and have you read it now. It went into a lot of really great stuff, like you and Mortal are doing something that isn't out there for people. That we're talking about issues that are so important today for so many people and for a multitude of reasons.
I don't know if you want to read the whole thing.
No, I'm not going to read the whole thing out loud, but like there was just a lot to her comment, and I just really appreciated it and thought that you might as well. I wanted to shout out and say thank you for saying all of those things.
Yes, thank you, Lorna. I want to read that later.
Okay.
If you're okay with that, it's not necessarily for me, but
No, well, I mean, the part that I captured was the podcast related stuff. So I think that she understands that the podcast related stuff is probably going to come to both of us.
well, I mean, it's okay
I hope
if not.
so.
It's okay if not.
So then there was Linda Cowgill, who wrote notes as she listened to the podcast, which I think is amazing. And then she just sent that as a comment. It was amazing. I really liked it. It helped. It kind of helped me see how our podcasts can be like boiled down from her perspective into these concepts. And I'm sure other people would come up with a different set of notes from it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of what makes it awesome. Everybody can see a little bit different. You seem really interested in it.
Yeah, I love these sorts of things. I'll be honest, I love timestamps, but you don't have to do that. That's a lot to ask. I'm just like trying to get the context for some of these. It's fine to get political, and your honest opinion is nice to hear. I may. I have a lot of political ideas, but thank you very much for the kind comment. I love that.
And that was the end of the comments. Some of those Mortal didn't get to read, so we may have to bring them up again next time if there's something additional in there. But I also wanted to give a shout out to Jenny Lane. She didn't comment, but she did make this amazing article about vulnerability that she tagged us both in.
Yeah, and kindly linked my article for the podcast, which
Yeah.
I was kind of floored by. That was so sweet, Jenny. Thank you. And yeah, the article was beautiful.
Yeah, I'm going to link that one wherever I can put in links as well, because I thought that, like, if I had to choose between Jenny Lane's and You Goods, I'm not really sure that I could. It's like those two articles this week were probably my favorite reads.
They're hard to compare. I mean, it's like comparing apples and oak trees, you know. So like, it's very different things.
Right, right, right.
Um, but yeah, it was. They're both amazing to read, and they're both so open and vulnerable. What Jenny did was, if I understood correctly, you know, did like a voice memo, like recorded her own voice talking, just riffing on vulnerability, and then typed it up into an article. And like, that's kind of something I've been toying with the idea of doing for like a decade, and not doing. So like, that's awesome. And yeah, they were both very good.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, well, I think that wraps up that section.
Oh, actually, um, I had a couple of comments that came to me in a more private manner, I would say, than you know your typical comment. One of the friends that I interact with through the Discord and the Twitch streams that I interact with was kind enough to check out at least episode one of the podcast, and I was very happy to see him drop by, and I can't remember what his comments were now off the top of my head because I'm a silly Billy like that. But yeah, it was really nice. I don't know how to. I don't know what to say about it
I
though.
meant to snippy it and I completely forgot. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. It's not a big deal. Um, I don't necessarily think that he's the sort of person that would want to be shout out. Hey, I'm pretty sure you know who you are. Let me know. I'm happy to like shout you out like officially and publicly. But if not, I just appreciate you being here. Thanks. It
There
means
was
a
also
lot.
there was also a name thing on that. I just want to let that person know, just in case they didn't want their name to be blasted. You can change the name that appears on your Medium thing, and it'll change across Medium whether whether you did it today, yesterday, 5 years ago. It'll change it everywhere, and you can use that um, everywhere, regardless of how you logged in or signed up. So that's I just wanted to say that.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, thank you all so much for interacting. You're all so kind in what you're saying to us. Some of it seems like you're talking to people that know what they're doing, and I assure you we don't.
We do not.
We
We
have
know
no idea
nothing.
what we're doing. Like I pop into these like half emotionally exhausted and drained every time, and I feel like I ramble like a silly person a lot. But
That reminds me, since we have a tiny bit of extra time, I want to just put it out there that so You Good was very vehement. Well, not vehement, just consistent
hmm,
about me looking into setting up a place where people can give me tips or give us tips and everything. So I did that. I did a buy me a coffee page thing. There's not a whole lot to it just
oh,
yet.
tips as in money, not tips as in like ideas to help us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so silly.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, fine, I'll think about it. And then she was all like, no, but really. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess you're right. Because, the only avenue I really had set up right now was you had to kind of dig for it a little, and it was Patreon, and Patreon you can do one-off payments to, just as a hey, take my money but I don't want to commit to a monthly thing. But people don't know how to do that, and they're not very good at like
No,
administering that. So I just set up a buy me a coffee page, and it's on the rss.com page. I have that as my tip link in Medium now, and I'll I'll probably find other places to put it when I can, but that way people know, I'm not telling you you have to, and you can give your weird disclaimer that I totally agree with.
as I'll continue to say often, please make sure you're taking care of yourselves first. Like we appreciate any generosity you feel like you can spare and share. Thank you so much. But take care of yourself first. Make sure you're taking care of your loved ones. And, I know people personally that donate far more than they really can afford to donate. And it hurts. It hurts them. And I don't want to hurt you. I think you all are awesome. So I just want you to find as many smiles as you can. So, but thank you.
And I have like a $20 goal.
Okay.
Because they say, goals help people feel good about putting stuff. I don't know. It felt good to do.
All right.
It was
It's
20
fine.
bucks, man.
Yeah, I
I
don't know
thought
that
it
we
was
need to,
fun.
if we reach the goal, I don't know that we need to set a new one. I'm just throwing it out there. You do what you do. I'm not going to stop you.
Just put another $20 goal up. Okay, so anyway, this week's discussion is about anger and conflict. I did a bunch of research again.
Well, before we get into the research, let's go ahead and say that it was this episode is basically suggested by Sieran Lane. There was a comment from one of the very early podcasts where uh, now Sieran, I keep using he pronouns for you. I thought you were he, him, or he, they. So please correct me if I'm wrong. I would hate to be wrong in this regard. But anyway, sorry, anxiety brain made me think I'm wrong all of a sudden. Um, oh, you just got rid of it.
That's fine.
Anyway, yeah, there was a comment that Sieran put about conflict and about how conflict. There's a lot of people that could be averse to conflict, but sometimes going through conflict with your loved ones can really strengthen those bonds. And mentioned an article that they'd written, and how that article had led to conflict with some people that he was close to. And we've read the article, and it's very deep and interesting. I really like the article. I actually, but will someday get to it through my own profile and actually like clap and stuff, Um,
You have to sign up to be a member first.
I know, I'm getting there. uh, so anyway, yeah, I just wanted to mention that this idea for the podcast was presented by Sierra, and we appreciate that very much.
Okay, so I started with anger.
Mm-hmm.
When I just typed in anger, first of all, before I pressed enter on Google, the search,
Oh,
the suggested was anger management.
Interesting.
Just as soon as you put anger in, it automatically fills it with anger management. Like that's the first number one slot. The rest of them were all just variations of anger management, to my
These are
understanding.
On your algorithm.
I mean, that's true. That's true.
Not like calling you out or
I've never actually researched for anger management.
That's valid. It's true.
So, it wasn't like one of those little. It didn't have the icon of like search again.
Right.
So I assumed it was just a common.
It probably is.
Thing to search when you type in anger. A lot of when I actually just put in anger, a lot of it was just there was a little bit of like defining what anger was, and the American Psychiatric Association or American Psychologist, I don't remember exactly. AMA, whatever whatever it stands for, the AMA. APA. Yes,
there it is.
APA.
There we go.
You're
cool.
right.
Ask me anything.
They said that it's basically an emotion that's characterized by an antagonism towards someone or something you feel has deliberately done you wrong.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was a really weird definition for it, because that's like all the rest of them like were way more normal than that. But like that's an interesting way of looking at it.
I feel like it's too selfish. There's a lot of people now that are angry about stuff that has nothing to do with them, and that's valid.
Well, I think that's the point of saying something you feel has deliberately done you wrong.
Yeah, but done you wrong is the part I have a problem with. It's
Yeah, well,
done
they
someone
take it
wrong.
personally as if the thing had happened to them. They feel personally offended by whatever the thing is.
Okay,
That I mean, I think that that's the point of that weird way
understood.
of wording it is to include those types as well.
Interesting.
Um, so there's apparently three types of anger
According to
according to
your Google
my
search.
my Google search. So there's passive aggression, which we're all very familiar with,
Are we?
aren't we?
Well, what does it mean to you?
It's to hold it in. It's when you have that anger and you hold it in, but it comes out in ways that
It
aren't
affects your
overt.
right. It affects your actions and reactions towards the
In
person that you're
Yeah,
angry with.
right.
Understood. Okay.
There's open aggression, which is basically just violence. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
angry and you do something with it physically.
Sure. It could be screaming.
It could,
But
yeah,
yeah.
I guess that's true. It could be screaming. And then there's assertive anger, which is what they said is the right way. They didn't say the
What?
right way, but they basically the other two pointed to this as being the way to go. This is the healthy way to express anger, and I don't like the name assertive anger, but basically what it boils down to is being able to accept that you are angry, state that you are angry and what you're angry about to the person that you're angry at or to the person responsible for what you're angry about and work toward a solution for that. Like that
Wow.
is basically what I understood of what assertive anger was supposed to be.
What a dry
I know.
way to express something like it would I've read stuff like that before. It always kind of triggers me a little bit because it's like no one takes into account the fact that when we are angry, our ability to use rational thought is not super on point usually because it's a pretty strong emotional situation to be in. And there's a lot of people out there that are super adverse to it, and so sometimes, present company friggin' included, um, getting angry is immediately met with a heavy dose of shame and guilt at the same exact time. So it's very difficult to then look at it and be like, I feel this way. I shall communicate to this person that is involved that I feel this way and try to see how they feel in return. It's difficult.
Well, I mean, they're not saying that it's easy. There was nothing in that
It was
saying
just
that it was
it was
easy.
just stated so simply that it seemed like they were
Well, I
saying,
stated it that way. I'm paraphrasing something. You didn't read what they
no, that's
actually
true.
wrote.
I didn't read
So
what they wrote. It's true.
get
It's
offended
true.
at me paraphrasing it in a less knowledgeable way.
Lol.
So anyway, so other parts of my search results came up with that it's associated with different mental illnesses like bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, oppositional defiance disorder, and other certain types of disorder. It's a symptom.
Okay. And yes, it certainly if you were to read, what those um, disorders involve. I'm not even sure if disorder is the right word for these, but uh, if those divergencies, what those involve, then a lot of those descriptions are going to come with, anger episodes of anger or whatever as a descriptor that happens. And I get that, and I get why you would get that information from Google. But let's take a sharp left turn. How do you feel about a sharp left turn?
I guess. Okay. Where are we going with it?
Maybe. Um, what? Nah, not yet. Maybe in a minute.
All right.
Continue with where you were going.
So and then right after it started talking about different mental illnesses, which it didn't even talk about all the. I know there's other mental illnesses like schizophrenia and autism. They have anger as a association, but it didn't even mention those. It was just like the really harsh ones.
Not sure if I
Um,
would consider autism a mental illness myself, but I understand.
well, it's a condition. It's a
Yeah,
psychological condition. It may not be a mental illness per se, but it's a type of neurospice.
sure.
But also medication. And most of the results after a certain point seemed to just want to medicate the anger away.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh. Uh, I've had a difficult time with anger in my life. Um, and the thought of, instead of trying to understand and deal with it to the little bit that I have in my life, just medicating it away to make it go away, considering that option as a possibility for me, again fills me with guilt and shame that I didn't try and accept this portion of myself. This is not judgment for anyone that chooses differently. I keep getting told that like the certain standards that I hold myself to make it to where other people try to hold themselves to those standards. That's ridiculous. Never once in my life lived up to my own standards. But yeah, that's what I was gonna left turn you with. I was gonna say, this is a podcast about vulnerability, and we're the ones sitting here being vulnerable. So, what's your relationship with anger? And I will answer the same question, and I can go first
No,
if you'd like.
that's a fair point. You can go first if you'd like.
Okay, so I kind of started already. I've had a very a hard relationship with anger. I spent more than a decade, maybe more than 2 decades, tamping every instance of anger that I felt down with every ounce of my being so that it never escaped out at other people. Tam and I actually, like, I don't know how much we've said about this, but Tam and I have been talking every day for over 15 years.
Nearly every day.
Pretty much every day.
Pretty
And
much
so,
every
like,
day.
a lot of the struggles that either one of us have gone through, the other one was there for. And so Tam's witnessed a lot of my growth in accepting my own anger, and I'm still like a couple of baby steps along that path. I'm very, very new to it.
You really hate anger.
I'm not a fan. Um, I had a, and I'm gonna go ahead and tell the story. Is it okay?
Okay.
I had an event when I was in middle school where I was amongst a group of like sports-minded bros, peers, same age, that uh, were very unkind in their competitiveness. And I was never super competitive to begin with, but their opinions of me mattered at the time greatly. And so uh, for months I was in a lot of pain every time I attended this activity until one day I broke. And we were in a bathroom and I picked up one of those large wooden door stops, like just a triangle that is used to hold the doors, and like I threatened them with it, and it lasted a few seconds, and I eventually broke and dropped it and started crying, I think. But I've never forgiven myself for it, and it was almost 30 years ago now. Because of that event, and it's not because of anything that happened with other people, it's because of what my mind did to me after that event, how much I judged myself for it. Every time I feel anger, it is immediately occupied by shame and guilt, and that helps me to drown out the anger. And so, in the last decade or so, I've realized that anger is very important to be able to sometimes communicate effectively with the people that we love, be able to establish and share our boundaries to find the people that care enough to to respect those boundaries. It's very important, but I'm still a neophyte along that path. I know very little. Just wanted to share that real quick. Go ahead. Sorry, I talked for a long time.
No, it was good. It was good. You touched on some things that I have written down for later, but
Oh, interesting.
totally fine. So my relationship with anger is that so I feel a lot. Like I always have, and I probably always will unless I get, medicated heavily to where I can't feel as much, but I don't plan on doing that because like it's good when it's good and when it's bad, I've I've got coping mechanisms that make it tolerable for the most part. But early on, I cried a lot when I was like a real young kid, and
Same.
I remember a lot of different episodes where like it didn't make sense where I was crying, and I'm sure I'll get into those later. But this is not a crying episode. This is an anger episode, and at some point, I don't know when, at some point in my childhood, it went from me crying to me being angry and yelling at people. And I weaponized the feeling that used to make me cry, and I made it and I used anger to make it into something that could fight for me, that could protect me against that feeling, I guess. That that has been my relationship with anger, and it's taken me a lot of time, a lot of patience to start dismantling that. But there's still times when it's an automatic thing. It's kind of like what Jenny was saying in that article. It's the armor,
Yeah.
and I don't go to the shed to get it. It wraps itself around me whether I want it there or not.
Like Tony fucking Stark.
Yeah, but like
Not in a good way.
and not in a good way. And it starts poisoning me, and like sometimes I have to like painfully rip it off like sections of skin to get free of it in a situation. It feels that bad sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, I know you have. And but when I can rip it off despite the fact that it's clinging to me as hard as it can, I find a better place, like what you were saying.
Mhm. Mhm.
So then that brings us to conflict, because really, like, you can't have an anger and conflict without the conflict part.
Sure.
So I did a little bit of research on conflict.
Okay.
And without pressing enter, you know what comes up?
Sure. What?
Conflict resolution and anger management.
Well, I mean, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and dip in for that for just a second. I choose, not that this is accurate, but I choose to believe that that means that we're trying. The majority of our majority is a hard word to say here. The majority of our race is realizing that we are showing we're showing off our anger and our conflict at people, and is preventing us from being able to grow a society as a society. And that's proof to me that we're going in the right direction.
Sure, you believe what you want.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
So when I pressed enter, pretty much like there were two things, two undertones, right? The majority of the results, without scrolling, like even when you scrolled for a little bit, the majority of the results were just definitions of what conflict is.
Okay.
And then when you scroll past those and you start getting to things that matter, not that definitions don't matter, but you know what I mean, okay? You want a definition, you will put DEF in there after the fucking word. You don't expect to get the definitions by putting in the word. No. Like nobody does that, right? Anyway. So
people might do that.
The other thing that comes up was how to deal with conflict at work. And there was like one or two that were like in relationships, but the majority of them had to do with work. And I think that might be because the idea of conflict as a word is clinical. When you're fighting with your spouse, you don't call it conflict.
Or at least professional, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. You don't call it conflict. You say, I had a fight with my best friend. Or I had a disagreement at the very, like, lightest. Sometimes, you'll say, how do I... You'll boil the fight down to something more not concrete. You'll boil it down to something that's more foundational in the relationship.
Or there's a whole bunch of slang out. I only think of one at the moment, but there's a whole bunch of slang out there for having a fight with a friend.
Oh, having a row.
Having a row, yeah. I'm sure that there's many others that I'm not aware of. I only speak the one language, so
and not very well.
Not very well. But so but like yeah, it feels more personal and kind of moves away from the word conflict when you make it a personal interaction.
So then I looked up vulnerability and anger, which I felt was more aligned with the core of what we were kind of trying to do.
Do you want to say anything further about conflict?
Not really. I'm moving on from that. I mean, there's more. I talk about it more down here, but like,
okay,
I'm still going through the stuff that I found on the internet. So what I found was that like they were basically trying to tell you what to do, basically, like slow down, consider your intentions and your desired outcomes. Accept that you'll want to avoid your anger because it's unpleasant, and evolutionarily, like, it's designed to make you do things because that's why it's unpleasant.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of things were just basically wrapped around the idea of learning to manage your anger. Because
Sure.
without the anger, you can be vulnerable again. Yay! But then, like, there was this weird dichotomy where, like, being vulnerable is probably going to make you angry.
Well, there's also a lot of vulnerability in anger. I mean, there's certain moments, there's certain ways in which anger affects you in the same way that alcohol does. You care less about how your words are received, and so sometimes truth comes out in a way that wouldn't if you weren't angry. Of course, sometimes you just flat out fucking lie.
Right.
You're angry, and so you just say something that if it were true, it would be damning to the other party. And just because it's not true, your anger doesn't give a fuck. That happens. That happens a lot.
Well, I found one particular result that I found to be incredibly interesting that I never really thought of before because I didn't know. I don't know if it's true. It's by Psychology Today, and that's fairly reputable.
Okay.
But they say anger and anxiety are the same thing.
What? That must be an editorial.
That they are basically fundamentally the same thing. I don't know if they meant like chemically or maybe in the fight or flight response kind of way, but they are basically the same thing. You get stressed out to a certain point, and you and anger is like at the height of the anxiety pyramid.
I might be able to accept that. I can't accept it as the same thing. I can go through very specific examples of what the two things feel like to me, which of
Right.
course my personal experience doesn't necessarily weigh for anybody else. But I don't know that anxiety ultimately leads to anger if you go far enough along the path every time. But I'm not going to challenge it either,
That's
honestly.
fair. That's fair. It's not really an important point. I just thought it was interesting.
It is moderately interesting.
So then I came to
I still think it's an editorial.
kind of the things that I wanted to actually talk about and see what you thought about it.
Okay.
So first off, conflict management and resolution. And I don't remember where it was, but I came across a thing somewhere that said that the idea of conflict resolution itself is actually not the greatest way of putting what you're trying to do. That it's better to put it as conflict management because you don't. The idea of resolution boils down to somebody being right and somebody being wrong, or
I
that somebody
disagree.
has to, completely cave in for the benefit of the resolution. That there's, and it also assumes that there's a problem to solve. But if you consider it
That's valid.
management, then it's not about somebody being right and somebody being wrong. It's not about there being a problem that needs to be solved. It's about there is there are two people that have feelings, that have needs and wants and desires. How do we make it to where those needs and desires can both be met at the same time?
Right. Yes. I
And
fully agree with that.
doing it that way, you can kind of see how it strengthens relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult to find two people that are angry that will take both parties into account, but if when it happens, then that anger definitely typically leads to, both parties at least being closer to where they want to be. Because
Right.
there's always going to be a bit of a give and a take. Sometimes everyone can be happy at the end of the day, but it's not usual that everybody gets everything that they want if you're, negotiating. If you're
Yeah. I mean, even when you
hmm,
even when you do the things you want to do to be happy, like, you still find out that it's not 100%. It's
no,
never 100%. And that's okay.
right.
Sometimes we don't get what we want in the moment for the bigger picture of what we want.
Yeah, I think conflict management is a great way to think about it for interpersonal relationships, and I
Yeah.
think conflict resolution is probably more of a workplace thing.
Yeah, it's a very professional, clinical way of looking at.
We just these two
the
people
interaction.
have this issue and we just need to keep production going. So
Right.
how do we make it to where you
Right.
two won't make this issue stop production? Because that's all companies care about.
um, that the idea, I also liked the idea that anger or conflict, either one, they are basically signals that something needs to change.
I love that. That's beautiful because that is, I think, one of the biggest benefit or the biggest things that anger brings to us as individuals. It's like when we become angry at something, that means we're looking at something that makes us unhappy. And what is that thing that makes us unhappy? Why does it make us unhappy? You can learn so much about yourself because you've gotten to this point, you know?
Right. And I hope that you don't mind me doing this, but in your memory, in your story, when you were angry and you picked up that doorstop, that was signaling there was something that needed to be changed. You took
Yes.
it as on yourself as like I need to change me in some way, and resolved it in that way, I believe.
That was essentially what I did after the fact.
But if we were in a society that valued emotions as the red flags and helpers that they are, you may have been able to get somebody else outside that noticed that and was like, you know what, this is a symbol. This signals that we need to change something.
Right.
I don't know what needed to be changed. Maybe they needed to sit the other boys down and explain to them to not be dicks.
They needed to change the way the world works a few decades earlier or wait a few more decades because all of that was wrapped up in the very toxic phrase boys will be boys.
Yeah. Which is definitely something that we as a society recognize needs to change now, or at least some people recognize it needs to change. And it still hasn't completely washed over
No, there's a lot of
everything.
places that aren't even close to where we are here in the backwards Midwest. So,
And a lot of people, myself included, yourself included, we think about like we want to avoid the conflict because we're like, oh, if I say something, then it's gonna hurt somebody or it's gonna damage the relationship. And what I've kind of found out through trial and error myself, and it seems like the internet may agree to some extent, the damage is actually done by holding it in. When you avoid conflict, you're ignoring that something needs to change.
right, when you're unhappy with the situation, the people that care about you are affected by that.
Right.
And I'm going to add a little bit, maybe put it underneath that concept a little bit. Um, oh, how was I going to say that? Sorry, this might take a second.
Should I pause it? Do you want to move on?
No, no, no. Let's just make them listen to silence for a second. It's what I'm trying to say is that like the feelings exist. Say what you said again, but it.
That when you ignore the conflict, you're ignoring the signal for change, and that actually does the damage. Because like when me and I guess we'll call him Ghost. When me and Ghost got together, there were a lot of things that I really didn't want to bring up because, truth be told, we kind of had this weird abusive relationship going on, and neither one of us wanted to bring up anything that was going to cause more conflict because we had enough conflict going on already. But in the end, I kind of had to force myself to do it because I knew logically I couldn't hold, like if I kept holding that, it was just going to get worse and it would turn up as a worse conflict later. So if I pushed through that and got to the place where I can say, okay, I don't want to do this, but I have to do this, so we're going to do this, and just bite the bullet, even if it did end up being a horrible conflict that blew up, it was better than trying to pretend like everything was okay and ignore the signs that something needs to change. And when that something needs to change, the two people involved or multiple people involved, they're the ones that need to come together and talk about it, address it head on, confront it.
Right. And if you discover that there's an incompatibility there, then that needs to be addressed.
Right.
Because if there's an incompatibility, then you have to figure out what you're going to do next. What I was gonna say, what I was gonna say that I attach underneath your point there is that the pain that you bring to others can only really happen through love. And so, I'm saying that funny. What I mean is that, like, when you love someone, you are opening yourself up to pain from that person. And I don't
Right.
mean that that person's mean to you and it hurts. That's possible because there's moods that exist. But I also mean that when that other person hurts, it hurts you. You care about this person and they're in pain. And so, presumably, they care about you as well, which means that when you're in pain, it hurts them.
Right.
And especially when you're in pain because of a conflict between the two of you, that pain is felt, even if not consciously recognized, often, I think. And so, if you are trying to spare your loved ones from the pain that your anger could inflict, I urge you to consider the possibility that your your internal feelings, your internal anger, internalized anger, is causing that pain anyway.
And that's an interesting point, and that kind of brings it around to what I was going to say next is that if you focus on working together and like you said, accept that like you may already be causing them pain,
Mm-hmm.
it gets you on the same side. So you're not against each other, which
Right.
is really the part of conflict that is the most destructive is when you're choosing sides, when it's two people and a line in the middle. But if you come at it like you're two people, you're both on the same side, but you have different opinions, you have different feelings, you have different ideas, but you're still on the same side, and there's something else that's on the other side that needs to be identified. And
It
you,
becomes you and your partner or your friend
right,
or your lover against a conflict. And
right,
your two minds are better than one at trying to solve that.
right. And that's what Ghost and I have found is when we can remember, okay, I love this person, I'm in a relationship with this person, I don't want to be their enemy, let's be together. It erases the line and puts it between us and whatever it is we're arguing about. And a lot of times, one or both of us will just be like, you know what, this isn't important enough. This conflict, the thing that we're arguing about, I don't care enough about this for it to mean anything in the context of our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's causing more damage than it's worth.
Right.
And while that might be, kind of a shitty out sometimes, because, sometimes it comes back and it's like, oh, well, it may not have been important, but it seems like it is kind of important and we need to dig into it further. With some things, it's just our freaking autism, just, doing stupid stuff like, there's only 5 spoons in the drawer instead of 4.
Mm-hmm.
How dare you? you know, something stupid like that.
Right. Exactly.
And then I also like to state that like one of the biggest things of anger and conflict, I don't use them as often as I should, but boundaries and breaks.
Right.
You can walk away when you're angry and come back when you're more calm, even if you know that you're going to get angry again. That period of time where you're calm allows you to think about the situation and in without the chemicals going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point you can determine whether or not you need to set boundaries because like sometimes the conflict is with people that aren't safe, like we discussed in previous episodes. Like some people just aren't safe to be
Right.
vulnerable to,
Mm-hmm.
and instead of trying to work together with them to resolve the conflict, you kind of need to set the boundary so that the conflict within you is resolved and their part of it is their part of it, and that line is necessary to be on sides. But it doesn't have to be about the anger. Like the anger doesn't have to be what draws the line. It should be, if you're going to draw a boundary like that, you should probably wait until the anger is past.
Right. Because your mind isn't just your angry mind.
Right.
You
Yeah.
have different moods with different ideas, and some of them are better solving problems.
Yeah.
Than others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel like I was super vulnerable in this particular episode.
Anger's a hard one.
Anger is a hard one. And I mean, I did explain how I weaponized it, but like that's barely scratching the
Well,
surface.
the thing is that, and if you don't mind me sharing some of my perspective over your journey with
Okay.
it, it it began as a spear, and it became a spear and a shield.
Hmm.
Like your anger, um, was terrifying to people in your late teens,
I
early
did
20s.
intimidate people
Yeah,
a lot.
but over time, through some of the abuses that you had to live through in your life, it also became this like desperation shield. Like it would come up as in like, you can't hurt me because I'm angry at you now.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, and that's the way it protected me.
Right. And it
Yeah.
wasn't 100% perfect, especially because like I didn't get angry back.
Yeah, that's true. You were definitely a different kind of foe.
Hmm. Yeah,
But no,
absolutely.
even when in with everybody else besides the mortal, um, it didn't like it felt like it protected me because I didn't care in the moment, but it didn't protect me at all. As soon as that anger was gone, I cared again.
Hmm.
And then I had to also care about the damage that I did in the process and the
Hmm.
fallout and everything. And it was bad.
Yeah, it's hard, and you don't know that stuff right away. It's hard to be able to take all the moments into account sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes your brain only gives you the moments that feel convenient to come up with the idea that you want, and that happens a lot as a young adult. A young adult is a hard time. And I wanted to say earlier, you were talking about how breaks and boundaries are important,
Yeah.
and I 100% agree with that. And I know how difficult it can be when you're in an argument with somebody and the other party decides it's time for a break and you're just not
Oh
ready
my god, I
yet.
hate that so much. We have it so much. Me and Ghost have it so often. Both sides.
Uh huh.
Both sides. Neither one of us want to be the one like if the other person is the one walking away, we've it's almost like we've been trained through our previously abusive relationships with other people that when they walk away, that is a challenge. That if we don't continue pursuing after them, worse is going to happen. They're
Right.
going to find some way to make this our fault or make our lives worse for not having continued this argument. So we need to make sure that it ends right here with the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm still feeling the emotion, I can't let you walk away.
Right. And while it can be very difficult in the moment of anger to remember this, I just, it's very important to remember that, like, even conversations have consent at
Yeah.
the end of the day. And if the person you're talking to does not consent to continuing the conversation, you really have no recourse. You can yell and scream and chase all you want, but at that point, you're kind of just being cringe. Sorry.
Yeah, on the other side of that, whenever I'm the one like whoever's leaving between me and goes, the other person doesn't always stop talking. And while it would be great if the other person could stop talking, I've kind of I don't know how Ghost feels about it. I think he understands and agrees, but I don't know for a fact. But I believe that whoever is walking away, you've already made the choice to walk away. That is your responsibility to not get baited back in.
Right. It's difficult.
It
That
is,
also is
yeah.
so very difficult.
I know.
So very difficult for a lot of people to do, to hear that, that final, that thing that makes it feel like the other person's going to get the last word
Hmm.
and not rise to the bait. And it's like,
It's hard.
if you've made the decision to walk away and the other person is not respecting
Stand
it in the
strong.
moment, continue to walk away. It's okay. You can come back after 15 minutes or an hour or a meditation or a yoga and decide
I try
to
to
address it then
I
if you
try to
want
do
to.
this thing where I mentally dissociate from my legs. Where like I've already got the path logged in for
Mm-hmm.
where my legs need to take me,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to take me there whether I like it or not. I have to at least get there, and then I can make the decision of whether or not I want to go back.
Right.
And usually by the time I'm there, I
Right. Understood.
don't.
Okay, we're kind of running a little long, so any final
Yeah,
thoughts, or we have more to say
we
there?
will have to do another episode on this at some point because there was just so much. And there's still so much. We barely scratched the surface on all
Well,
these things.
we're only really talking about stuff for like 30 to 40 minutes at most
Yeah.
because of our intros and stuff, and we don't want to go over an hour definitely for right now. And so these are going to be little bite-sized chunks, but what I really like about this is that we're just throwing our own, dumb ideas out there into the world, silly ideas. Sorry, I don't want to be ableist. And into the world, and everybody that hears them can run with them wherever they want. The discussion doesn't stop here.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
That's true.
it's cool.
So I don't know what next episode's gonna be.
Okay.
I couldn't like. There's so many that Lorna like gave us, and I don't want to be. I don't want to play favorites and like do the next five as Lorna's suggestions. So I figured we'd pick one now, and then just keep coming back to the
Do we have suggestions
idea.
from others besides Lorna?
Yeah, we have one from another one from you, good, and then we have one from you for the compliments.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Well, we're definitely not doing that for a while. I definitely think it would be Lorna's turn. If we have any other suggestions for episodes that we think would be interesting to do, then in the future comments, then we'll add them to the list. But we can kind of flip flop back and forth between Lorna and you good until we satisfy our current suggestions. So what are they listed here?
Yeah, so I'm thinking either abuse or relationships. I don't know if we want to do work stuff just yet.
I'm not quite ready for abuse, I don't think.
Yeah,
Let's
well,
start with the relationships.
there's a lot of different kinds of abuse.
There
So
certainly are.
she she gave us a plethora of different topics.
Ranging in severity.
Yeah, so so what do you think about relationships, couple or family?
Oh,
I know
you
these were
thought,
all very specific. Like,
I don't know that we. Let's do a general
you want to do a
relationships
general relationships? Okay.
episode. We're just going to kind of talk about vulnerability as it pertains to relationships.
Okay.
We will be vulnerable about how our vulnerability has been in relationships, and you know, bring in any comments and stuff that we get from the community.
Cool.
Sound good?
Relationships.
Good
Got
job.
it.
Good job. Excellent.
Well, I guess that's about it then.
Guess we're about done then, huh?
I think so.
Well, thank you so much for listening to us again. We appreciate it. We're scratching the very butthole of an hour at this particular moment, and you sharing your time with us is very, very sweet. So thanks again, and I hope you all find smiles this day.
And I was the accidental monster. You can find us both on Medium. And until next time, follow each other, follow the dopamine, and follow yourselves always.